Whether you ordered fig cuttings online or you've been storing them and you want to know if they're viable, this video is for you. Let me show you. If you guys want to buy fruit trees, cuttings, and more, check out theamericanfigcompany.com. Thanks for supporting us. I have a few different cuttings to go over with you guys, but we'll start with the simplest one to tell. First thing we want to look at is the bark. We can see it's not brown and decaying. It's nice and smooth and it has a little bit of a green tint to it, which is a clear sign that this cutting is alive. But if we inspect it further, we can see where these little dots are here. Those are called nodes, and those nodes are where new growth is going to come out. They're all green and looking like they're about to burst. And this one is actually a tip cutting, so we even have that green node right there at the very top. So that's why this one would be pretty easy to tell that it's alive, but these other ones are going to be a little more difficult. Now this next cutting is a little bit more difficult, but you can still see a little bit of the green of the cambium layer because the bark's pretty thin. It's still an older cutting, so this is not a green cutting by any means, but there is a greenish tint to the bark, which is a good sign because if it was dead, it would definitely look, you'd be able to tell that it's rotting. The skin is very brown. And then with these nodes, the reason it's a little more difficult to tell is because these are dormant buds, meaning that they haven't started to push any growth, which means they're not green yet. However, if you look at them, you can see that they're still very visible. They're not brown at all. And if you do look close enough, they have a slight tint of green. So that's a very good indication that this cutting is still good to go. The number one sign to look for is definitely going to be on that bark. It's going to be brown, and sometimes it'll actually be so rotted that even if you rubbed your finger on it, that bark would come right off. It'd just be a squishy mess. So this cutting is definitely healthy. And this one along with it, even though it's a bit larger, you can clearly see that greenish tint to the bark. Now, every cutting from every variety will be a little bit different, but you should be able to see that tint. And actually, if you wet the cutting underwater, it even gets a little bit greener. So this one's the same as the other in the fact that if you look closely, you can see there's a little bit of green in those nodes there. And the skin, the bark is very firm. So once again, a very good cutting. And likewise, even though this one is a little bit skinnier, this one's probably about pencil thickness, which is probably the minimum size for a cutting that I would ever root or send. This one, like the other ones, has a little bit of a greenish tint to the bark. It doesn't look like it's brown and decaying anywhere. And if you guys look at these cuttings and then you see a decaying cutting, you're really going to be able to tell the difference. And once again, on these nodes, a little bit of green to them. And another good way to tell with a little bit thinner cutting like this is that it should have a little bit of bendiness to it because figs are naturally very flexible. So if you can bend it like that and you don't hear a snapping, then that is still a viable cutting. So these are my number one tips to being able to tell if a cutting is healthy or not. Now, after all those other tests, if you're still questioning it, there is one more trick to tell, and that's simply by taking a knife and scratching the bark just like this. And you can see right there that green cambium layer that is just under the bark. That is a sure sign that your cutting is alive and healthy. So if all else fails, go ahead and scratch that bark. If it's green under there, you're good to go. I hope this video helped you guys out. If it did, share it with any of your friends who might be interested in the content. Leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. And remember, there's variability in the size of the fig cuttings. That really doesn't make that much of a difference. A thicker one might take a little bit more time, a thinner one a little less, but that's not always true. So any of these cuttings are great cuttings. And you can check their viability in any of the number of ways that I've just showed you. Thanks for watching, guys.